Hey guys, Rick Stone here from Stoney Acres Gardening. Welcome to my channel. It's spring and garlic is one of my favorite crops this time of year because it's one of the very first crops up. I love the fact that we plant it in the fall. We see it coming up so early in the spring, but it's important that we do a few things now in the early spring to make sure that we have a great crop this summer. So I've got 4 tips for you today to help you have a great garlic harvest. Before we get started, please make sure you get subscribed to my channel, click that notification bell so you get noticed every time I release new videos, and make sure you stick around till the end. I've got a free workshop that we are going to be doing here in about a week that I wanted to let you know about. Garlic is a pretty carefree crop. There's not a ton that you have to do. You plant it in the fall, you harvest it in the middle of the next summer. But there are a few things that you can do now in the springtime that are going to help assure that you have a great crop this summer. The first of those tips is these guys, okay? Garlic is very shallow rooted. The roots are all right here up at the top of the plant. They don't delve very deep, and so garlic does not compete well with weeds. So the very first thing that you need to do in the spring is make sure that you get your bed weeded. I always say that you should weed early and weed often, meaning you need to get after these weeds when they're little like this. We don't want big weeds that have a good root system. That is going to disturb the roots of our garlic and compete with them. So make sure that you are constantly checking your garlic, get rid of any weeds that you might have. That way you're not going to have to worry about competition with your garlic. One other thing that you should make sure you do is to weed by hand. We don't want to be using a cultivator or any kind of tool around your garlic. Again, because it's so shallowly rooted, we want to make sure that we are staying away from those roots and doing everything we can to protect the root base of these plants. Next on the list is fertilizer. So garlic is one of the few crops that I actually feel like I ought to fertilize. Garlic is a big feeder. It likes a lot of nitrogen. We want to get that good, healthy, leafy top growth, and so it's a good idea to give your garlic a little bit of fertilizer here in the springtime. So I like to do it twice. We want to do it once about somewhere between 4 weeks to 2 weeks before our last frost date, and then we'll do it again 4 weeks after that. So I'm 4 weeks away from my last frost date right now, and so we're going to go ahead and get these guys fertilized. What I've done is I've mixed up a little bit of fish emulsion. I've got about 2 gallons here, mixed it up at full strength. The fish emulsion that I use is a 5-1-1, so highest in nitrogen, and we are going to just go ahead and give this bed a really good soak. Make sure that we soak it in really well with this fertilizer, and that is going to give us our first boost. Then about 4 weeks later, we want to do the exact same thing. High nitrogen fertilizer, liquid is great, make sure it's organic, and give those plants another boost. That's it. 2 fertilizers, one roughly 2 to 4 weeks before your last frost date, and then 1 4 weeks after that. That should all the fertilizer that you will need for your garlic. After we start getting that top growth going and doing really well, we don't want to mess around adding additional fertilizer because then that could give us too much top growth, which we don't want. So just those 2 is all you need. Next on the list is some mulch. So again, because our garlic is so shallowly rooted, it does not like to get dried out. Garlic doesn't do well with drought conditions, and so we want to make sure that we keep this soil evenly moist. And so once I've fertilized, I'm going to put down some mulch. So you've got a bunch of different options here for mulch. You want to get a good 2 or 3 inch layer going. You can use things like grass clippings, you could use straw, you could use chopped up leaves. In my case, I'm going to be using some compost. This bed got a little bit of compost when we planted it in the fall, but I like to use compost as a mulch. So we're just going to put down a solid 2 or 3 inch layer of compost throughout this bed. That is going to keep the moisture down, it's going to keep the weeds down, and eventually that compost will break down and nourish the soil as well. So it does all kinds of good things. That's why I like to put down just some compost as my summertime mulch here in my garlic bed. That should really help to keep that soil moisture even and help those plants just to thrive. Last on our list is watering. So if you're anything like me, in the springtime, I tend to probably rely a little bit too much on the weather to water my garden. I like to, use the rain as much as I can, but you do need to make sure that as you are letting your garlic mature, that you don't let it go too long without water. So if you have a dry spell in the spring where you have, a week or more without water, then you need to consider coming out and getting some water on this crop. Again, we want to keep a nice, even moisture, make sure that it always has that water resource available. We don't want it soaking wet all the time, but if you live in an area where you don't have a lot of rains in the springtime, or if you just happen to be having a dry spring, you may need to come out and give this bed a little additional water, maybe that you might not be thinking about early in the spring, just to make sure that it keeps that even. Of course, as we get closer to summer, you're going to want to put your regular irrigation system in and take care of it that way, but just make sure that you don't let it get too dry. So those are your 4 tips for what you should be doing this spring to make sure that your garlic has a great harvest come summer. So just to recap, we want to make sure we keep the weeds down. You want to fertilize a couple of different times, about 4 weeks apart. We want to make sure that we get some mulch down on this bed, and we want to make sure that we keep that watering nice and even during the spring. That's going to give you a great crop of garlic this summer. All right, before we go, please make sure that you subscribe to my channel. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. One other thing I wanted to remind you is we do have, coming up here in just about a week, a fun, free workshop. For those of you that are watching this in April of 2024, we're going to be doing a free spring planting workshop on April 19th, 2024 at 2 p.m. Mountain Time. This is a private event, so that means you need to register for it. So there's a link down in the description of this video you can click on. All I need is your name and your email address. I'll send you the link. We're going to go live and do probably about 45 minutes of teaching. We're going to talk about cool season versus warm season crops. We're going to talk about whether you should be planting different crops using transplants or if you can direct sow them out in the garden. And then we're going to talk about some succession planting strategies that are going to help you have more production out of your garden beds throughout the summer months and as you're growing your garden. So I'm thinking we'll probably be about 45 minutes of that. I've got a couple of prizes to give away, and then I'm going to do a Q&A. So I think we'll probably be around an hour and 15 minutes total for this workshop, and I would love to have you come and join us. So again, link down in the description of this video, and it is on April 19th, 2024 at 2 p.m. Okay, that's all I have for you for this week. Everybody have a fantastic week. Happy gardening.